There was a time when one name stood above all others in American farming, a name that symbolized power, innovation, and the heartbeat of the rural world: International Harvester. For nearly a century, this company shaped the way humanity farmed, worked, and even lived. Its machines didn't just till the soil, they built empires, fed nations, and changed lives. But like every empire that rises too high, International Harvester would eventually fall, crushed by its own size, mismanagement, and the relentless march of change. This is the story of how one of the greatest industrial giants in history rose to power, and how it all came crashing down. Chapter 1: The Seeds of an Empire. Our story begins in the late 1800s, an era of steam power, horse-drawn plows, and endless prairies. At that time, the American Midwest was booming. Farmers needed better tools, stronger, faster, and more efficient machines to feed a growing nation. Enter Cyrus Hall McCormick, a visionary inventor who had revolutionized farming in 1831 with his mechanical reaper, a machine that could harvest wheat far faster than any human with a scythe. McCormick's reaper became legendary. His company, McCormick Harvesting Machine Company, was one of the first to mass-produce agricultural equipment. But McCormick wasn't alone. Other companies were competing fiercely: Deering, Milwaukee, Plano, and Champion. By the early 1900s, the market was cutthroat. Each company was fighting for survival, and profit margins were razor-thin. Then came the deal that changed everything. In 1902, banker J.P. Morgan, he brought together 5 major agricultural machinery companies, merging them into one unstoppable giant, the International Harvester Company. With a capital stock of $120 million, an enormous sum at the time, this new company was poised to dominate the world of farming. And dominate it did. Chapter 2: The Golden Age of the Red Machine. The early 1900s were a golden age for International Harvester. Under the leadership of Cyrus McCormick Jr., the company expanded rapidly, producing everything from tractors and threshers to trucks and refrigerators. Their machines were rugged, reliable, and painted in that unmistakable IH red, a color that soon became a symbol of strength and pride across rural America. Farmers loved them, dealers trusted them, and by the 1920s, IH had become a household name. But it wasn't just about business. International Harvester became part of the American identity, woven into the very soil of the country. Its slogan, "Built for the man who works the land," wasn't just marketing, it was truth. By the 1930s, IH had a tractor lineup that was unmatched. The Farmall, introduced in 1924, became one of the most successful tractors ever built. It was lightweight, versatile, and perfect for small farms. The Farmall series would go on to sell in the millions, forever changing how farming was done. Farmers who once worked sun up to sundown with horses now had the power of industrial machinery at their fingertips. Chapter 3: The Power of Innovation. Through the Great Depression, through World War II, and into the booming post-war years, International Harvester kept innovating. They weren't just making tractors, they were building trucks, construction equipment, military vehicles, and even home appliances. The IH Scout, launched in 1961, was a rugged off-road vehicle that predated the modern SUV. It became an icon among adventurers and farmers alike, a tough, go-anywhere workhorse that could take on mud, snow, or desert. Meanwhile, in agriculture, IH continued to lead the pack. They introduced diesel engines, power takeoff systems, and advanced hydraulics that revolutionized farm machinery. By the 1950s and 60s, International Harvester was a global force, with factories in the US, Europe, South America, and Asia. Their red tractors could be found on nearly every continent. In 1979, IH was the 4th largest manufacturer of trucks and tractors in the world, employing over 100,000 workers. To the public, it seemed unstoppable, but behind the scenes, trouble was brewing. Chapter 4: Cracks in the Foundation. The seeds of International Harvester's downfall were planted long before its collapse. As the 1960s turned to the 1970s, the company had grown too big. It was no longer an agile, farmer-focused machine. It had become a bloated corporate empire. Executives were battling internal divisions. The truck division, the farm division, and the construction division all competed for funding and attention. R&D slowed down. New product launches were delayed. Competitors like John Deere, Case, and Massey Ferguson began catching up and in some cases surpassing IH in technology and reliability. But the real blow came in the late 1970s. The global economy was in turmoil. Oil prices skyrocketed, inflation hit hard, farmers faced mounting debt. And then, in 1979, came a decision that nearly destroyed the company. Chapter 5. The Strike That Broke the Giant. In the fall of 1979, the United Auto Workers UAW union, representing around 35,000 International Harvester employees, went on strike. They were protesting long hours, wage issues, and management's rigid policies. The strike lasted almost 6 months, one of the longest in the company's history. Factories sat silent. Production halted. Dealers ran out of tractors and trucks to sell. When the strike finally ended in April 1980, IH had lost over $600 million in revenue. But the damage went beyond money. It shattered morale and trust. By the time operations resumed, competitors had already filled the gap. Farmers who once swore by IH had switched to John Deere or Case. And to make matters worse, the early 1980s brought the farm crisis, when falling crop prices and rising interest rates devastated rural America. For International Harvester, it was a perfect storm. Chapter 6. The Collapse. By 1981, International Harvester was drowning in debt. Losses were piling up, and management seemed powerless to stop them. The company's once mighty product lines were outdated, and cost-cutting measures made things worse. Factories closed, thousands of workers were laid off. I was selling assets just to stay alive. In 1982, it reported a staggering $397 million loss, one of the largest in corporate America at that time. The proud red giant was collapsing. Finally, in 1984, the unthinkable happened. International Harvester sold its entire farm equipment division, the very heart of its business, to its rival Tenneco, the parent company of J.I. Case. The merger created Case IH, and the famous red tractors would live on, but without the International Harvester name. The rest of IH's assets, including its truck division, were reorganized into a new company, Navistar International Corporation. The International Harvester name was officially retired in 1985. An empire that had once fed the world was gone. Chapter 7. The legacy lives on. But the story doesn't end there. Even though International Harvester as a company ceased to exist, its spirit lived on through its machines and the people who built and used them. Across the U.S., you can still find vintage Farmalls, Cub Cadets, and IH Scouts running strong decades later. Collectors restore them, farmers display them, and enthusiasts gather at tractor shows to celebrate what IH stood for: durability, craftsmanship, and pride. Case IH, the company that inherited IH's agricultural legacy, still carries that red color, and even the IH logo can be found subtly integrated into modern designs. Navistar, meanwhile, continued building trucks under the International brand, a direct descendant of Harvester's industrial roots. In a way, International Harvester never truly died. It simply evolved, split into pieces that still move the world in their own ways. Chapter 8. What really went wrong? So, what really caused the fall of International Harvester? Historians and economists have debated it for decades, but most agree on a few key points. Corporate mismanagement. The leadership struggled to make bold decisions. Instead of focusing on core strengths like tractors and trucks, they spread too thin across too many industries. Labor conflict. The 1979 strike crippled production and permanently damaged relations with workers and dealers. Economic pressure, rising costs, high inflation, and the 1980s farm crisis all hit IH harder than its competitors. Slow innovation. By the late 1970s, IH was falling behind in technology. Their machines were tough but often outdated. Poor financial control. The company was over-leveraged and burdened by debt from years of expansion. In short, IH collapsed not because it was weak, but because it was too strong for too long and failed to adapt when the world changed. Chapter 9. The Emotional Aftermath. For the people who worked there, the fall of IH wasn't just a business story, it was personal. Entire towns were built around IH factories. Generations of families had worked there. When the plants shut down, communities collapsed with them. In places like Rock Island, Illinois, and Fort Wayne, Indiana, the silence of those empty factories was deafening. Many former workers still speak about IH with pride and pain. They built something that mattered, something that fed the world. For them, International Harvester wasn't just a company, it was family. Chapter 10. The Red Legend endured. Today, decades later, the IH legacy still inspires. At tractor shows and farm museums, you'll see perfectly restored Farmalls gleaming under the sun. The deep red paint, the silver IH logo, the sound of those engines. They still turn heads and stir memories. Collectors call them red power machines, a tribute to the unstoppable energy that IH once represented. And online, entire communities are dedicated to preserving IH history, sharing manuals, restoration tips, and stories of machines that refuse to die. From dusty barns to shining parades, the spirit of International Harvester still rumbles on, because true legends never fade, they just keep on running. International Harvester's story is more than just business history. It's a reflection of the 20th century itself. It's about vision, ambition, and human progress. It's about how machines reshaped the earth and made it possible to feed billions. But it's also a cautionary tale about what happens when power becomes too comfortable and when leadership forgets the people who made it great. From the hum of the first reaper in a wheat field to the thunder of a roaring diesel engine on the prairie, International Harvester left behind more than machines. It left behind a legacy of innovation, endurance, and pride. A reminder that greatness is not about how high you rise, but how long you're remembered after you fall. So that's it for today. If you like this video, then please hit the like and subscribe button for more videos. Thanks for watching.